everybody, welcome to Square State. I'm your host, Michelle Jackson, about to geek out about all things Colorado. I'm super excited to have the following conversation with this guest about what she does, her experiences in Colorado. By the way, if California and Texas had a wild love affair, Colorado would be the result. Yes, that's true. So today's guest is so interesting. If you're not following her on Twitter, you have to. She's so interesting. I'm very excited to speak with today's guest today, Patricia Cameron. Thank you so much for being on the show. I just have so many questions. If you could share who you are and what you do, that would be fantastic.
I'm Patricia Cameron. I am the executive director of a nonprofit called Blackpackers. It's based out of Colorado Springs, but we service Colorado statewide.
What exactly is Blackpackers and how did it even start?
Blackpackers, I like to tell people it meets those at the intersection of underrepresentation and economic vulnerability. It's my mission, I guess, but I would say it's grown way beyond that now. My board shares that mission, and the community that we serve they definitely help out with that. I got into it because I learned a lot about generational wealth and the issues with the wealth of Black households since the Civil Rights Movement. The average Black household has lost 75% of their wealth since the Civil Rights Movement, while the average white household had a 14% gain of wealth since the Civil Rights Movement. And so I saw that applied in the outdoors in Colorado, not just that there aren't a lot of Black people here, because we're here in our pockets, but also that if you look at the wealth and its place in the outdoor society, it can be super expensive to get outdoors. So I wanted to reach out to maybe a group of people that had barriers to entry, be it from knowledge or be it from concern about being the only Black person in a dispersed camping area. I've been there too, or perhaps money.
How long have you been working on this as a mission, and what was it like getting it started?
I think so. The first time I took myself backpacking, I went solo, and I was in 2017, and it was like a wildly unsuccessful event. I mean, I survived, but like it was super cold. It was a snowstorm. At the time, I didn't even think to check the weather report. I just decided that I was going to go on this day, and whatever happened that day, I was going to do it anyway. So it was literally a snowstorm out there. But it took me weeks. I was working as a medical assistant at that time. It took me weeks to save up from overtime to get the money to buy used gear to get out there. And then I went out there and nearly froze in a snowstorm. And so I told myself that nobody else would have to go through that if I had any say in it.
Was this the first time that you went hiking?
No, I had been hiking and I had camped before a couple times prior to that. This was my first time backpacking. And so my first time backpacking was also a solo trip in a snowstorm.
What spoke to you about backpacking and why did you even take the trip?
I think I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. I have this habit of finding things I think I can't do or I'm afraid of and then do it. And at that time it was backpacking, and I felt like it would be amazing to prove to myself that I could survive outdoors using just my own, skill set, whatever that was then, and my own kind of moxie or mental fortitude. So I don't know. It just felt great to wake up the next morning and realize that I survived with only the things I had on my back.
Before you went on that first trip, were you afraid of it? What was scary about the idea of doing this?
Yeah, so being alone in outdoors. I had never done that before. Animals. I mean, I don't even think bears started getting out of hibernation at the time I went, but I was convinced one was going to maul me. Just, things like that. Honestly, it was that, or maybe getting lost in the snow, somehow freezing. I shouldn't have thought that. I was at a state park, but these are all things that you magnify in your head, It's like when you get into a pool and you think you're going to drown, but you're only in 2 feet deep. That's exactly what happened to me on that first trip.
Given how intense this first trip was, it surprises me that you went back for more. So What happened to get you to do the second trip and the third? Because I get the feeling that you've fallen in love with it. What changed?
It's addicting. And that's the case across every event I've ever held, and for all the people I've ever taken out that have not gone before. Every time I go on a trip, it catches on for people. I've never heard someone tell me I'll never do this again. Like, it's never happened. I guess I can't say that that wouldn't happen in the future, but going outdoors and getting away, and in whatever capacity that is, I happen to like camping and backpacking the most, but I also fish. I like whitewater rafting. Hiking's great. I've climbed a bit. For me, getting out and just like making a home for myself in the woods um, is it can be both an adrenaline fueled event, and it also can be, a relaxing event, and there can be some anxiety and fear behind it. But I think combined, all three of those things lead to a really transformative experience. And once it catches on, I feel like you can't really let that go.
You created a nonprofit, which is notoriously, and it can be notoriously difficult and time consuming and that kind of thing. And you had to get board members and all of the fiduciary investment and that kind of thing to get people to support what you were doing. How did you get people to understand that this is the mission of Blackpackers was so important?
I didn't have to.
Oh,
I don't think I had to convince anyone. I just told them, and every single person that I talk to, any capacity that isn't a troll on the internet, has really been super stoked to help out. My vice president reached out to me on Twitter before I even made it a nonprofit to tell me he wanted to help, and my treasurer did the same. So these are people that I didn't have to go track down. It was people that saw what I was doing and heard that I needed help, and they just wanted to be there. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of pushback. There's a ton of pushback. Just the name Blackpackers causes people to have conniption fits because they're stressed about, wow, what if it was white Packers? Wouldn't that be racist or whatever? So there's always that. But the people that, I don't know, the people that matter to me have been super supportive.
If I'm looking to support Blackpackers and its mission, how can I do that?
There's a lot of ways to do that. Of course, nonprofits need money. That's going to always be there. So that's always the underlying ask somewhere in there, right? But we really would like to spread the word to as many communities as possible that this is an option for them. There are a lot of groups that are doing this kind of advocacy work and exposing people to the outdoors. And I just want to throw my hat in there as another option for making sure that everybody in Colorado, hopefully, that wants to get outdoors will be able to do so, and that money will not be an object. That is my goal. So I think we have reached from Colorado Springs all the way to Fort Collins. I'd like to extend that to the Western Slope, out to the Eastern Plains, however far we can get it.
So if I'm looking to use Blackpackers, how does it work?
We post our events on our Facebook group and on the website. A newsletter might come out for people that have already been out about the new events. And you are welcome to sign up for the events. At this time, I do not ask people to fill out an application proving any financial need. Perhaps in the future I will, when it comes to more grants and demographic things they need to collect to get that. But at the moment, if you just tell me that you have a need and this is something that you would like to do, we just make space for you. And then you fill out typically a contract just talking about the space that we create for Blackpackers and how it is a very brave and inclusive and open space for everyone to step in or step back, however they feel comfortable in these events. A waiver, and that's about it. You just show up.
What if I had said that, hey, I'm wondering how I can connect with equipment. Like maybe I'm not looking to attend events, or maybe I'm trying to do both. Like maybe I want to do events, but then occasionally I'm doing something else separate. Is it possible to rent equipment or access equipment through Blackpackers as well, separate from the events?
Yes. We ask that people who would like to access some gear, because we do have a gear locker and a gear library for people. We ask that people have gone on an event already. So whatever you're asking for, we typically ask that you've been on an event regarding that. So if you'd like to get some camping gear, we ask that you've been on one of our camping events before, just to, make sure that that some people that may have not been as experienced before have had practice pitching a tent or using some of the gear.
And would I, like, if you're in Colorado Springs, as a person who's already gone an event and they're using the equipment, would we then be directed to the locker, quote unquote, that has that equipment there. And if you're in Denver, the same thing. And if you're in Boco, the same thing.
You know, my equipment's all in Longmont, funny enough. But
Oh, okay.
I'm probably the most inconvenienced by where my gear is. But we have, board members and participants up and down the Front Range, so we can get it out to you. At the moment, Blackpackers is more mobile than it is stationary in general. I'm based out of Colorado Springs.
Okay.
But so we take the show on the road a lot. So
that's actually kind of cool. Yeah. I find that kind of cool. So at the time that we're talking, you're gearing up to do the Colorado Trail. I am very excited about this trip I love seeing your tweets about your preparation and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you've done it before. Like, I felt like you've done it before, but I could be wrong.
I have not.
You haven't? Okay.
Nope.
So I would love to know a couple of things. The first is, why did you decide to do the Colorado Trail?
Why the Colorado Trail? Because I was born and raised in PG County, Maryland, and that is where my heart is. Home doesn't mean it's all it is, but I feel like Colorado has become so much more to me than I could have ever expected as somebody who moved out here 26 years ago. And I feel like it called to me, like I was destined to get here somehow. I even have a Colorado flag tattoo on my right shoulder.
Wow.
And that tattoo is my most recent EKG. And instead of putting the Front Range alongside the flag or on top of the flag, it's actually my heartbeat.
Wow.
And I like to tell people that, I became alive, or I really found myself in Colorado. But the Colorado Trail for me personally, and not for Blackpackers, personally, it's about trying to make my way across a land that has given me a lot. And I kind of want to celebrate that, the love I think Colorado's given me by kind of traipsing across the state and really experiencing it. Are
you doing all of the segments?
Yeah, I'm through hiking. So you have two different ways to...
so excited.
Yeah, you have two different ways to hike a long trail. And there's a through hike and a section hike, and both of them have their merits and pros and cons. I'm doing a through hike, so I'm going from Denver to Durango for 486 miles over a multiple week period of time.
When you share what you do and your areas of interest outside of the state, what's the feedback? I will say that it's really hilarious when I'm in other states and they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Colorado." And there's always a double take. It's so funny at this point. I'm so used to it, but I grew up here. So my experience with it is, I think, different sometimes than when people have moved here and they've lived somewhere else before. Mm-hmm. So what's it like kind of sharing this Colorado experience? You are, in my view, you're a native. You've been here forever now, but you moved here from somewhere else. So I'd just like to hear what it's like, especially as a person of color moving to a state that is not as colorful as others.
Yeah. So you mean how does it feel moving from Maryland to Colorado, or how that informs me, or what do you?
However you want to interpret it.
I moved from a majority Black area. PG County, Maryland, the last time I looked it up, is the richest county for Black Americans in this country. My dad was born and raised in Washington, D.C. My mother was born and raised in Texas, but moved out to Maryland when she was young. And then I, of course, was born there and lived there my entire life. I think a lot of PG County informs me in Colorado. I've been out here for a long time, but I just grew up a different way. Back in PG, I had Black newscasters, and all my neighbors were Black, and I had both sides of my family there, a huge, large Black family that were comfortable in the environment because they had lived there for generations.
Right.
It was difficult when me and my mom got here because we got here as a military family. And even when I was living in DC or Maryland, the military bases are fairly diverse. And so I always grew up around, if not, Black people, but a diverse environment. So we got out to Colorado. We didn't live on base. We bought a house on the southeast side of Colorado Springs. And while it is the most diverse part of Colorado Springs, it was a culture shock for me. My teachers weren't Black anymore. I wasn't the majority in the classroom anymore. It felt lonely. I didn't have generations of Coloradans before me to kind of guide me through things. And so the mountains always seemed like this huge, mysterious force, right, that I could see, but I was afraid to, how do I navigate it? How do you get on the other side? How do you climb it? And so I guess it was just hard for me in that way, that I didn't have family here to guide me in the Coloradan way. but I feel like if you stay here long enough, you will eventually drive a Subaru and wear chacos.
I
And
still do not to either one
I
of
do.
those.
I want to tell you, sis. I have a Subaru and chacos. This is what happens.
Resistance is futile. You have a focus on connecting people with the outdoors. Why do you think that's so important for people of color to be involved in, or to experience that space?
I mean, it's a birthright. I can't speak to any other group because I'm going to speak it to mine, but I think in general, it's all of our birthrights. But I think people in color and, BIPOC, Indigenous people, I think that, they always been, especially the history of Black Americans, we really, literally, physically built this country from the literal ground up. And I think a lot of times, and I'm not speaking for everybody ever, but especially to my personal story, my grandmother used to pick cotton for $3 a week in Texas. And once she got out of the field, she didn't want to see another wood again. That's always been her case. And so I understand also that outdoors for her was associated with something else. I have found that I get a lot of peace and joy, and I'm rejuvenated out there. And I think that once we've commoditized the outdoors and put a price tag on it, it's pushed a certain group of people to the fringes of those activities. And that's the case with anything with capitalism. Once you put a price tag on it, somebody can't reach it, right? And
right.
I think it's unfair when, Pikes Peak is America's mountain and maybe some people can't pay the money to get to the top, don't have the gear to walk to the top like I did, those kind of things. So I think that's what it means a lot to me, the benefits of it in general, and the fact that it's ours to begin with. So just taking back what's ours. And then lastly, we saw what COVID had to say about health disparities in our communities.
Wow. Yeah.
And systemic racism has a lot to play with that. And economics and capitalism, again, has a lot to do with those things. And anything you can do to improve health outcomes, like getting out and enjoying nature. A lot of the science proves that hiking and just getting out and stuff is a lot for mental health and physical health.
What would be the one thing that you would tell someone who is afraid of nature about embracing nature? It's specifically a person of color who's like, I'm outdoor curious, but I'm scared to step a foot in the woods. So what would you advise them?
I think that there's a lot to be said about generational trauma, and there's a lot to be said for people who have a valid concern about being off in the woods, probably surrounded by white people. I mean, if we're going to be on the nose about it. Black people in this country have dealt with segregation in national parks. They've dealt with what has happened to Black people in woods, things of that nature. I would never discount if somebody has a little wariness about going out there. And that's why we do what we do in numbers. That's why Blackpackers have, groups where you can feel safe. I remember being the one Black person out at a lake and having the ranger drive around the entire lake and pass by every white family, but stop me and my son for my fishing.
Wow.
I've been there before. And so I hope that the peace that comes from being surrounded by your people with a bit of a shared experience will help them with that anxiety.
What is the worst thing about living in Colorado, and what's the best?
The worst thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like what Colorado? I don't know. Like I really don't.
What's the thing that gets on your nerves?
I don't know. I'm not a very religious person.
Right.
There's a lot of religion in Colorado Springs. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I just would say for me, it's not being as interested in it. I feel like there's less of a space for people who aren't religious.
Right. Okay.
But even that, I think in Colorado, you find your people. It's not hard to find your people. I think the cost of living in Denver and Boulder is kind of a lot. Like I want to move out of Colorado Springs because I'm thinking maybe I could get my son involved in some more like schools with greater diversity up there. But then I don't know, like the cost of Colorado Springs is a lot, a little bit cheaper. So I think those are probably the two things that bother me, the cost of living. But then again, comparatively, it's not as bad as other cities. And I also feel like I found people that support me as somebody who's less religious. So for the things that bother me, I feel like I've found a good counter for all those things.
What's the best thing about living here?
It's Colorado. I just looked yesterday. I was driving home and I just took like a small like detour because I wanted to spend some time with the windows rolled down because Colorado summers, I've said it before, are undefeated. There's nothing better than like a nice breezy Colorado summer. We have like excellent weather here. No water. I guess that's it. That's the worst part. We're landlocked. Like that's not
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to drive around and I remember looking to my left. I think I was on like Union when I was at the intersection of Union and Fillmore Circle, whatever it is. And I just looked to my left and saw the mountains sitting there with like this kind of colorful sunset, which is of course due to some smoke, some fires
Yeah.
burning to the southwest. That's also happening a lot in Colorado. But like I just it's almost like I forgot that the mountains were there. And then when I looked over, I couldn't believe that I live in a postcard every day. Like it's amazing.
I'm heading down to Salida tomorrow and I am so happy.
Salida's gorgeous.
I love Salida, and it's been a while since I've been there, and I'm staying at a place called the Stay Amigo Lodge. So obviously by the time this goes live, I'll be back. But I love that we can just explore the state and just, climb around things and just, you're right, like look at the postcard that's framing our view. And I'm going to go and soak in Mount Princeton hot springs. And
yeah. Have you been there before?
I haven't, which is weird because I've been around the state quite a bit, but I haven't. So I cannot wait. And it's going to cool off, thankfully, tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. And I love that I can continuously explore. I actually, as I was talking to you, I was thinking about something. What is one of the things that I've noticed I'm very excited about is all of these communities, outdoor communities being created by other POCs. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that like in the last couple of years that it's becoming a thing. What's your view on, I know you hate Instagram because I saw it on Twitter.
A lot.
But what's your view on how social media has started to normalize seeing POC faces in outdoor spaces, especially here in Colorado?
I think it's excellent. Colorado is very quickly like becoming the outdoor hub of the country. We have OR here twice a year. We have the VF Corporation here. We have a fair amount of resources for the outdoors here. And I think if any place is going to do that, I'm glad that Colorado is kind of pushing to try to be at the forefront of that, JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion movement, hopefully. I think that, Instagram can only go so far in normalizing Black faces in outdoor spaces. We just had Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper and how she responded to him. A lot of it is that he is Black in an outdoor space.
Right.
That's she didn't respond to that. If it was, I think the response would have been different than a white man in an outdoor space. And we saw what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Right. I think that Instagram posts can do something, and it just can't do as much as we need the other forces of society to do that work to unlearn some of those things. Because I don't care how many pictures I show you of Black people climbing. If you have internalized anti-Blackness, those pictures aren't going to help you from, having that bias when you encounter them. So I'm glad it's happening. Right. I think it's great. I think we have a lot of work to do, and we're seeing that now.
When I reached out to speak with you, I kind of was thinking about the questions I wanted to ask. And one of the things I realized was that, and I realized this a while back, I never knew that it was weird to other people that I was in an outdoor space as a Black person. Like, I didn't know it was a thing because I started going outdoors and enjoying that as a little kid. So like my mom was working like a billion jobs and she would find all of these programs to sign me up for. And she would just put me in a program and I would we were in Boulder. And so I was in the YMCA at Boulder and we would go horseback riding, and she found out about Outward Bound. And so she applied for a scholarship and I got it. And I did Outward Bound for when I was 13 for like the entire summer. And that's so awesome. I had all of these experiences. So it was very normalized to me to do these things. And maybe I was one of a couple of Black kids, like not a lot, obviously. And so as an adult, it's this weird duality in my mind where I intellectually, I get that for other people, this is a weird thing, but it feels so normal for me. And so part of what I want to do with some of these conversations is to to really highlight that, no, it's not normal for a lot of people to either see as other hikers because maybe they've internalized that only white people do this, or Black people do this, or like the jokes that are made on TV about, I'm not going camping. Why on earth would I go camping? You know what I mean? And understand some of the background story behind those comments, which you touched on earlier in our conversation. So I appreciate your mission. I appreciate what you do. I cannot wait to hear about your trip, because last year I was, the Colorado Trail is calling to me. I'm not quite ready for it yet, but I'm down for that. What is your hope that you'll experience on the trail?
Oh, wow. My greatest hope is that I finish.
You'll finish.
The second greatest hope is I just am looking forward to the relationships I'll build, the towns I'll see, and seeing them in a different light, right? Because it's one thing to drive to like Salida, and it's another thing to walk to Salida.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting just to, after spending a week in the wilderness, and maybe having a couple nights with somebody nearby to stop in a town and, hang out with the locals, and just the sights I'll probably end up seeing, and the idea that this is something I can do. It always feels good to set a goal and then, aim for it. And even if I don't finish, let me just tell you that I don't think I have nothing against that either. I want to, but I also know that part of any journey and part of any goal and hope is to be able to tell yourself no, and to be able to recognize that every end goal isn't always finish. It's also experience. So super, super stoked to get out there and meet people and have those conversations. Let me tell you the story. So I sound like my grandmother. Let me tell you this story. A couple years ago, I took a solo tarping backpacking trip through Indian Peaks Wilderness, and I was going over Arapahoe Pass, and you could see the storm coming. And so I got down to tree line, because above tree line, bad things. I got down there, and there was two kids from Florida. These two, they were white boys, younger kids, probably a cool 13 years younger than me. We were all hiding out, trying to figure out how to avoid the storm. And eventually we decided to just camp there for the night because we weren't sure if we were going to get through it because it started hailing. Oh. And that night was so amazing. We just sat there. One of the guys brought a flask of whiskey. So we cooked. That's what you do in the Colorado outdoors. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. You're doing it wrong if you don't have a flask.
Yeah, it's just a little drink. So we stopped and we, made our dehydrated meals, and we shared that flask. And we were sitting literally on the edge of this pass, just staring out like this is abyss of mountains. And it just felt so great that these two strangers who I had never seen before and would never see again, we were able to break bread in that manner and hang out. And our plan was not to stay there that night. Our plan was to continue on, but we had to stop. And I wouldn't trade that experience where I had to stop and hang out with them for the world. And it also kind of is a testament to, I think, that the relationships you can build in the outdoors are so valuable. And once we can all of us reach the point where we are more interested in that fellowship and kind of gatekeeping the outdoors, we all can have some amazing experiences.
I tend to ask some awkward questions for my POC guests because I get a lot of questions from people of color outside of the state. I get questions about what's it like to live in Colorado. You've alluded to it and touched on it a little bit. I get questions about good and bad experiences. So I say this to all my POCs, just so you know, I'm going to ask these questions. So what is the worst thing about living in Colorado as a person of color, and what's the best?
The worst thing? I guess it's difficult to not be around the culture that I get from, when I lived in PG County. I'll say, though, that Colorado Springs has some great community members doing amazing stuff in different neighborhoods. And so I'm just so stoked to see what's been going on over the last few years. And I have to say it wasn't there before, but it's really been an awesome explosion of just just Black joy all over Colorado Springs. So I'm really appreciating that. I guess, like I said, the worst part is probably the cultural part that I'm missing. And the best part is, I don't know, being Black's awesome. I don't say, it's just, it's just what I am. I love it. I wouldn't trade this for anything in the world. So the best part is I get to be Black in Colorado. I don't know how else to say it. I am who I am, but I get to do it in the Rocky Mountains. That's pretty much what I got.
I love that answer. And if I'm looking to follow what you do and to support Blackpackers, how can we follow you and find the website and the resources and just be a part of the community?
For sure. So the Facebook page is CO for Colorado, CO Blackpackers. The Instagram, which took so much out of me to make, is CO Blackpackers. The website is coblackpackers.com. I'm going to write a trail diary for Backpacker magazine during my trail.
Ooh.
You can check that out there.
I'm totally checking that out.
That'll be awesome. I'm super excited about that part. That's one of the reasons why I'm stopping in town once a week so I can get some writing done. Yeah, that's it. We post a lot of our events on the website and on Facebook. And so when you see one, just sign up.
By the way, when you stop in Breckenridge, I highly recommend the Bivvy as a place for rest and refuel. And they serve free.
That's actually was recommended from the Colorado Trail Foundation. I actually went a different direction, and I can't tell you.
I feel like you're going to
reasons.
But okay. I met a lot of people refueling a couple summers ago at the Bivvy, and they were like, "This is awesome."
Yeah, it said. I mean, the Colorado Trail Foundation lists it, and I just went a different direction.
In case you're wondering, Patricia did complete the entire Colorado Trail during the summer of 2020. While COVID raged around us. It has taken me almost a year to publish this episode and a number of other ones that I recorded last year. At the time that we had this conversation, we didn't know how crazy things would get moving forward. I decided that now was a great time to finally release this episode because, well, it's almost summer. There are a number of incredible communities connecting Black, Brown, and other marginalized communities with outdoor spaces, often with allied support. And I want to make sure that if you are excited about enjoying nature, nervous about it, and would like to do so, that I share some of that information. Nature has been the space where I clear my mind, connect with my most creative ideas, and meet new people. A couple of weeks after the conversation that I had with Patricia, I went on an amazing backpacking trip with a local meetup group. It was incredible. Now, let's be clear. The emotional eating had caught up because of COVID. I was the slowest person in the group, but I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. At first, I kind of felt badly about being so out of shape and just so freaking slow. And then I realized that we all move at our own pace. Because I was the slowest person in the group, myself and two other members of the group got to see two bull mooses, or is it meese, 500 feet from the end of the trail after 3 days of backpacking. I loved reading about Patricia's experiences on the trail and watching the television coverage of her amazing adventure. I felt like I was along for the ride, and because she did it, I knew that I could do it too. Now, in the episode, I did say that I was hoping to do the trail after my birthday. That's just not going to happen in 2021. I wish, but it is possible that I'll do a couple of segments. I'm just going to play it by ear. I think that I might end up doing it for my big birthday coming up in 2022. For those of you who are parents, I highly recommend reaching out to day camps and other programs to see if they have scholarships available for you to apply for your children. I would not have had the amazing experiences, transformative experiences that I did outdoors if my mom didn't apply for those scholarships for me. She didn't have the money to send me on Outward Bound, but fortunately she asked about scholarships and I was awarded one. She didn't have the money for Camp Chief Uray, but fortunately she asked about it and I was awarded one. Fewer people than you think are applying for scholarships that are available to you and your children. Just make applying for scholarship funds a part of your regular routine. Sooner or later, your kids will likely be awarded one. Finally, if you're looking to enjoy the outdoors and are looking for community, here are a few groups to check out. They may have chapters in your part of the United States. Blackpackers, Outdoor Afro, which is an organization that was created in Oakland, California, and it's all over the US. Meetup.com. I love Meetup. I'm kind of weirdly obsessed with it. People are creating inclusive and allied communities all the time, especially in Colorado. Like there's a ridiculous number of communities just for doing outdoor things. Whether you are a boomer, if you are Gen Z, whatever, if you have a physical challenge, whatever it is, there is a group on Meetup likely for you. Girl Trek, Native Women Wilderness, Youth Outside, Latino Outdoors, Brown Girls Climb, and that's for those of you who want to do rock climbing. Out There Adventures, as you would imagine, out. Melanin Base Camp, Black People Hike, Indigenous Women Hike, Diversify Outdoors. That specifically is a resource, and it's a coalition of people looking to expand outdoor spaces to underrepresented peoples. It's also exciting to say that, to bring up the fact that Outdoor Retailer is coming back. I hope you were inspired by this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do make sure that you support what Blackpackers is doing. They always need money like every other nonprofit and every other organization like that. If you would like to sponsor a trip or just help in some sort of way, provide equipment, please do get in touch with Patricia. She would appreciate it. Thank you so much and have a fantastic rest of your day and enjoy the outdoors.